Good morning, friends. Do you see where I am today? Yep, I'm in our fabulous classroom. Today I'm in here so that I can clean up some things and get some things ready as we're cleaning up the classroom for the end of the year. I'll give you a quick peek though of what the whole classroom looks like right now. So it looks a little different than the last time you were here because they've been cleaning up and making sure everything is disinfected as they're already getting ready for next year. So, but that's not why I'm here completely. I'm here to do our portal story of the day for our recording. And if I show you this chart right here, this is the map of a story. So the story that we have been working on, we have talked about this part right here is the hook, where we're just trying to get our readers interested in the story, and that's the setting, the character, and where we introduce the problem. Now this part right here, where we're going up that mountain, is called rising action. And the rising action is where our story really happens and things are taking place. And there are problems that get in the way of us solving the major problem. Because right here is the climax, and that is the most exciting part of our story. So while this part right here, the rising action with those three problems, is going to be exciting, it's not going to be nearly as exciting as that climax when we actually solve the problem and figure out how our story will resolve. So, I'm trying to decide if I would like to read all of the story, excuse me, all of the stories to you, all parts of the story. I think it's kind of important to do that quick review. So I will go ahead and read all the parts of our portal story. So, one day my video game machine wouldn't turn on. This is part one, and I will put links to all of these videos connected to this video today, so that if you've missed other ones, you can come back to this one to redo some other ones. So, one day my video game machine wouldn't turn on. I tried fixing it by checking the connections, and when I peeked behind the TV, there was a hole in the wall. I knew I shouldn't, but I reached into the hole and was sucked right into a magical portal. When I got to the other side, this was the incredible world I saw. Suddenly I found myself on a mysterious island. I quickly looked behind myself, but the hole seemed to have disappeared. So this part I am talking about the setting. That's where and when the story happens. I decided I had better get familiar with my surroundings since it looked like I wasn't going back home very soon. When I looked around, I saw a beach with crystal blue water lapping at the shores and tall palm trees heavy with coconuts standing high above them. Seagrasses rustled in the gentle breeze and tropical flowers released their fragrances. The sun was shining bright in this golden, beautiful world. As I looked into the sparkling water, I thought I saw a fin flip, and the sound of tinkling laughter rang in my ears. The island was beautiful, comfortable, and safe feeling. It felt like the kind of place, excuse me, where magical things happened and goodness reigned. So that was the part where I talked about setting. The next part is about the character. I was definitely curious about the laughter I heard, so I moved toward the edge of the water. As I stepped into the water, a change started to come over me. I still felt like the same inquisitive, optimistic girl inside, but I noticed my legs started to tingle as scales started to appear. I quickly hopped out of the water, and they went away. Cautiously, I dipped my toe back into the water, and again, purple, green, and turquoise blue scales started forming, running up my legs and ending at my waist. I went in deeper, and as I got up to my belly button, then my shoulders, my legs fused together, and I realized I was half fish, half human girl. Pardon me. I've got a piece of fuzz floating around. I had gained the ability to change into a mermaid. I couldn't believe it. I turned into Sophia, the mermaid girl. As I swam back to the beach, the same thing happened in reverse, and my legs separated, and I was able to walk again. I dove into the water with excitement, opened my eyes, and found that I could see and breathe with no problem at all. I liked this new place I found myself in and couldn't wait to explore the underwater world and beautiful island. Okay, so that was part 2 about character. And the next part, part 3, was about the problem. After I realized I was amphibious and could breathe in and out of water, I fearlessly dove in and began exploring the crystal clear water. I was in a large cove of land curling around the water, and the land curling around the water made the water calm and warm with an opening far out that led to the ocean. I swam down under the water, and looking into the kelp beds, I saw the flipping of fins that looked a lot like mine. As I swam closer and closer to the kelp, I noticed that it wasn't all seaweed. Some of what I thought was kelp was actually hair attached to real mermaids. I decided to swim even closer, slowly, to get a better look, and several mermaids and mermen darted away. While I didn't want to scare them, I also wanted them to understand I was friendly, so I stopped and floated for a moment. I waved and smiled and noticed that while many of them had swam away, a few stayed close, curiously looking at me. One girl even swam a little bit closer to me. She looked back at the others as if asking them to stay close, then bravely came toward me. I smiled again, and she returned my smile. I decided to try speaking and said hello, but it came out like bubbles and squeaks. She pointed to the surface of the water, so we both swam up until our faces broke through, and she burst into laughter as soon as she took a breath of air. "Who are you?" she asked. "Where are you from? We have never seen you before." I told her my name was Sophia, and all about how I had arrived and what had happened when I walked into the water. As I told her about my experience, her face changed from curious to excited. "Do you mean to tell me that you can walk on the island as well as swim in the water like us?" I nodded. Other merfolk were coming to the surface as well, one by one, and quite a group of them were listening to our conversation. She swam over to them, and they huddled up together. All I could hear were murmurs of excitement. She swam back to me. "We need you, Sophia. We had our mother of pearl stolen from us, our most sacred gem. Without it, our queen is crying and sad every day. Do you think you can cross the island and bring it back from Dudley the dragon?" My jaw dropped with surprise. I wasn't sure I could do what they were asking of me. And that was the problem. So now we're right here at the rising action, and we're going to come up with 3 problems for our story. So I used things I know, other stories I've read, because as beginning writers, it's okay for us to borrow from other writers who are more experienced, and they always say, write what you know, right? And something I know are some stories I've read and video games I've played. So my 3 problems, I decided I was going to run into a snake. I was going to find a swamp, and I was going to have some cliffs. So those are my 3 problems I decided that were going to prevent me from just walking right into the cave. Because if I could just walk right into the cave, that's kind of boring. If I was just like, okay, and I walked into the cave, took the gem, and took it back to the... No, nobody wants to hear that story. They want to hear an exciting story. So when I thought about the snake, what was the snake going to do? I thought of the story of the Jungle Book. And in the Jungle Book, there is a snake, a boa constrictor, that wraps itself around Mowgli by looking at it in the eyes and hypnotizes Mowgli. And so I decided that I would borrow that piece of inspiration. For the swamp, I was like, how am I going to get across the swamp? And I thought of a story I've read before called Elmer and the Dragon. In Elmer and the Dragon, Elmer has to cross over a swamp, and some turtles line up, I believe it is, and they help him to get across the swamp. So I decided that I was going to make a boat and use those turtles with jungle vines to pull me across the swamp. And the last one, how was I going to get up those cliffs? Well, I've played a game called Legend of Zelda, and I forget what the whole thing is called. But in that game, you can find horses and goats, and you can tame them by petting them, and then you hop on them and ride them. And so I thought, if I see a mountain goat, I am going to hop on it and have it help me climb up the mountain. So those were the 3 problems that I came up with. That was my plan before I started writing. So do you think that you should also stop and think before you start writing and come up with your plan beforehand? If you have answered yes, then you are thinking like a teacher, because absolutely you should come up with those plans before you start your writing and do some thinking and writing before you actually start. And that way, when you actually get to the part where you're writing your story, you're not going to sit there and be like, I don't know what to think about. So just get a little scrap piece of paper, it can be junk mail or whatever, and just quickly jot down those ideas. So this is the story that I came up with for today. Pull this closer so you can see it. And I know I have it up and down today. I don't have my tripod, so I had to do my recording just a little bit different. After giving it a moment's thought, I realized that the reason I was probably sent to this place was because they needed me. As silly as it sounded, I'm gonna go ahead and get my finger. We use this in morning meetings in my class. As silly as it sounded, I was probably the chosen one, like you see in the movies. I answered that I would help them. The merfolk cheered as I swam to the water's edge and started walking up the beach. Now, I want to point out today that this is a lot of writing. And so when you're doing your writing for this says take at least 3 days to write this part. 1 problem per day. Tell how you solve each problem. Because if you just try to write this in 1 day, I don't know about you, but when I try to do things quickly, it's not always my best work. And so I'm encouraging you to take more than 1 day to do this. Okay, so I'm going to continue. I knew that dragons usually lived in caves, and that meant that I should head toward the mountain in the dead center of the island. I was heading into the jungle when I heard a hissing noise. Snakes. I hated snakes. When I looked up, there was the biggest, fattest, longest snake I had ever seen staring me right in the eyes. I stood frozen, looking right back at it, feeling sleepy. I started to imagine I was snug in bed when all of a sudden I realized I was being hypnotized. I forced my eyes away from the snake's eyes and realized that it had started to wrap itself around me. Squeeze! I freed my hands and pushed the snake away, escaping just moments before that deadly snake made me into his lunch. Now, I think that you guys know that that would be really a hard thing to do. But we're kind of using our imaginations in this story, and it's okay if it's not accurate to what would happen in real life. In real life, once the snake started to wrap around you, it would be very hard to escape. But we're just using our imaginations. Now I was running through the jungle. I forgot about being careful and almost ran into a soupy, watery swamp. I tried stepping on one stone, but as I put my weight on it, the stone sank into the muck. Looking around, I saw turtles swimming, huge tropical leaves, and jungle vines. Maybe I could make a boat. I quickly picked several of the largest leaves and tied them in a boat shape with the vines. Next, I lassoed several turtles and held on to them as I climbed into my leaf boat. Before I knew it, the turtles were pulling me across the swampy waters. On the other side, I untied them and set them free, thanking them for their help. All right, so I actually have 2 pages of writing today because there was so much to include with these 3 problems. Real life here, folks. Let's see, get this stuck in there nice and tight. Ugh, okay. All right, now I'm getting to my 3rd problem. And my 3rd problem is getting to those cliffs. Now I was at the base of the mountain. High above me, I could see a cave with smoke coming out of the entrance. So right there, I'm giving a clue that there's going to be a dragon up there that breathes fire. The mountain was so steep and rocky, and I wasn't sure how I could climb it. Just then, I spied a big, strong mountain goat. I had taken a bit of coconut before I set out on my quest, so I held it out to the mountain goat, hoping to lure it to me. It stopped and looked at me, then cautiously came toward me. Once it started eating from my hand, I petted it until it became friendly. In one swift move, I hopped on its back, and it started galloping and jumping up the mountain, trying to shake me off. I hung on for dear life as he continued higher and higher up the mountain. When we were close enough to the cave, I hopped off his back, and the mountain goat took off as fast as his hooves could carry him. Now that I was close to the cave, I needed to make a plan to get inside. All right, so those were my 3 problems that were preventing me from getting right to that mountain goat. So your job today and tomorrow and the next day are to write your 3 problems. And of course, once you finish, I want you to snap a picture of them and send them to me. All right? One thing I'm noticing as I'm reading your writing is that you're forgetting to put your capitals and periods. And I'm starting to see and but at the beginning of those sentences. Let's not forget to get rid of those. Cross them out if you put them in there and just make the next word have a capital. And after you have a period, the next letter is always capital. The other thing I'm seeing is sometimes we're forgetting to capitalize those I's. So when I stands alone, don't forget it gets a capital too. You are important. Your name starts with a capital every time you write it. So that means when you are writing in a story, when you say I, you're important. That's like writing your name. So it needs to be a capital as well. All right? So I think that's everything I wanted to talk about today. This is a lot of work, but you can do it. This takes time. It takes effort. And when your hand starts to hurt, just take a pause, take a break, go to the bathroom, go get a drink of water, and then come back to it. Is it okay for you to change what you wrote from the very first time to the second time if you think of better words or different phrasing? Absolutely. Good writers change their writing a lot. All right, next week comes the climax. I can't wait to read your stories. Thank you, friends. I love you, and I will see you soon.